everybody. John Kublank here with Off the Cuff, all things healthcare. And I am joined today by the extremely impressive, what I would like to say, the embodiment of nursing home care in its totality.
Thank you, John.
Miss Arlene Maxim. How are you, Arlene?
Oh, yeah. It's always amazing, John Riley, to listen to John Kublank introduce me every week. Yeah, I never know what he's going to say.
Well, I can't say enough. We put some other videos together that y'all are going to see real soon, that Arlene's kind of digging in and giving us a lot of good answers to some questions, and we're going to be putting out a lot more content. But today we have Mr. John Riley, the CEO and founder of Gentle Response. John comes with years as an Army veteran and a police officer, 20 years of total combined service, I think 20 plus years, right, John?
Yeah.
And now he's helping individuals and companies all over the country learn how to de-escalate, how to help protect their staff, their customers, everybody, the community, right, John? John.
Yes. Yep. Everybody. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, John, as I said before, you're here helping everybody. But when you're talking to a potential community member, customer, business, what's the first step that people, kind of come at you or ask you when they talk to you?
One of the things I always start off with is actually talk to them about some of the different circumstances and situations that they've encountered, depending on what their career field is. I just want to get a better feel for what they've encountered, get a feel for how they feel their personnel, staff, and volunteers handled it. And then really right off the bat, after doing that, I let people know, folks, there's no such thing as a magic word, phrase, or magic action that you can do that's just going to immediately and automatically just de-escalate a situation. But there are things that you can say or do to mitigate a situation from becoming a violent critical incident. And there are things that you can say and do to avoid and even completely avoid such a situation from getting bad. An angry person is an angry person. A person in stress and crisis is a person in stress and crisis. And it's just how you navigate that type of situation and avoid saying or doing something that could potentially make that situation worse. And that's really the key.
Nice. So when we're talking about healthcare in general, what do you think some of the major areas that we should be looking at when it comes to potential, let's say, hot zones of escalation points?
Right. First of all, de-escalation goes hand in hand with what the officer talked about a couple of weeks ago. You had an officer on your show, did a phenomenal job about talking about self-protection, situational awareness. Once you've taken stuff like that into consideration, you've done a background investigation, you want to get a feel for who it is that you're dealing with. Now consider the potential psychological, psychiatric situations that might be coming into play. Lower income, are they stressed? Are they stressed not only about their illness, but maybe bills, family issues? Keep in mind that it's not just their medical issue that you're coming in and potentially dealing with. You're going to probably deal with them being upset with some type of family domestic the night before that's still spilling over and boiling over with your visit to that house. So keeping in mind all these things that a patient is going through, one of the biggest challenges, I think, talking about a healthcare environment, is don't let yourself become so frustrated that they're not being compliant or they're being loud, rude, obnoxious, that you become so frustrated because, doggone it, I'm just here to help. And this is where you potentially begin to say and do things that escalate the situation, because you become frustrated that this person who you're trying to help is just not being compliant, or they're being loud, or they're being rude. And in the back of your head, you're like, for crying out loud, I don't deserve this. I'm not being paid enough for this. And it just starts spiraling. You've got to take a breath. Before you even walk up that driveway, take a deep breath. And if it is a house that you've been to before, and you know that they have particular issues or situations that they're dealing with, well, then gear yourself up to help to deal with it, to deal with their aggravation or stress. It's when we allow ourselves to get caught off guard that we react emotionally without thought, defensively, and oftentimes the first thing that you say or do is oftentimes probably not the right thing to say or do for a given situation.
Yeah, Arlene, it makes me think about how many visits we've asked our clinicians to do, right? And that has some sort of play in what he's talking about, the mental well-being of our staff. If they're overworked in general, it creates sort of a hotbed of potential escalation points.
See, now that's absolutely a good point. Right now, everyone is understaffed. You guys are probably understaffed. So you've got people doing 3 or 4 more extra houses than they otherwise would. So they're fatigued. So now they're emotionally fatigued. And if they didn't have enough food and drink to keep themselves nourished, and a lot of this stuff goes back to my Army training, having a good diet, having good exercise, and drinking lots of water is going to help you more effectively handle stress on your body. So now you have all this coming into play. Now, on top of that, if your clinicians have been dealing with an issue with the boss or an issue with scheduling or whatever's going on in their private life, now you've got all this coming into play. And so one of the things I tell clients is to emphasize how critical it is that we take a deep breath and really assess ourselves before we make contact with someone who may already be upset or may actually be kind of level, but then you end up saying or doing something by your tone of voice or your body language that sets them on edge. Because remember, you're still a stranger walking in their house. And if you say or do something that they take as being disrespectful, well, now you've set the stage for this situation being escalated.
Yeah. And you know, I had, after our last session, John, I've had a number of nurses reach out to me and give me examples of some places and some areas that they felt uncomfortable with. And one of them had to do with their employer. And you know, some of these places, if you're a hospital-based organization, oftentimes you have a whole safety committee and you have a safety division of the hospital. And some of them are telling me that those folks are telling the nurses that are going in these homes that they're not to be carrying pepper spray, not to be carrying things to protect themselves, which I think sends a wrong message to the staff, because I mean, that's their number one priority, is protect themselves, keep themselves safe when they're out in these homes. And I don't know that hopefully this is coming around now, because I mentioned that the last time we did a session similar to this, that the National Association for Home Care is now putting together a task force for safety of clinicians in the home. And I'm hoping that administrative people are not continuing to put their head in the sand and saying it's just never going to happen to us, because that is a really bad place to be. It can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone. One of us going to the grocery store. But the healthcare setting, you're absolutely right. The stress of not only the staff, but the family environment, and it may not be the patient themselves that's a risk to a clinician. It could be folks that are in the home, family members. And you know, we had there was a young gentleman that was murdered right around this time last year, and it was a grandson who killed him because he was not happy with the nurse giving attention to his grandparents and not paying attention to him. So, I mean, knowing that mental health issue going into that home is just going to be key to being successful and keeping yourself safe.
Totally. And in a given situation like that, again, if you did your homework and to the best of your ability, if you do determine that there is some type of domestic issue going on in the background like that, that can be so volatile, that right off the bat, you should be sending at least 2 people.
Yes,
and yes, I know you're understaffed, but oh my gosh, you just have to do what you have to do to keep your personnel safe, especially if you want them to continue working for you. Because if they don't feel safe, they're going to leave. Send 2 people to a situation like that. And that is a tragic, tragic situation. But there are some things that people could have done and said to have mitigated that. And I got to tell you, when I hear that and corporations have similar edicts to their staff and personnel for even shoplifters and things like that, I got to tell you, even a first-year law student, I think, would love representing someone who gets victimized in a situation that absolutely could have been prevented. Now, I am sure these corporate giants talk to their own attorneys. Is this defensible? I'm sure they got some type of hemming and hawing answer because in my very humble opinion, I don't know how a corporation is going to be able to defend themselves when they knew a particular house. There's documentation that a particular house is very volatile, and you still sent a single person there in the middle of the night or whatever. It just boggles the mind, and I feel like that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, and I pray no one actually has to die before something like that happens. I just want people to wake up.
Yeah, but we have had a couple that have died in this past year, which is why this has all come to light with us in trying to get the word out. And I think too, and I don't think we can underestimate the clinicians who feel that they can handle things. For instance, the last incident that happened in Connecticut, that particular nurse had a psychiatric background, and this patient apparently had some mental health issues, which was probably why she was assigned to take care of this person. Well, oftentimes we as clinicians think we can just handle anything, and so part of what I think we need to be retraining our minds we're not living in an environment any longer in this world that is conducive to saying it's all going to be okay and we can fix everything, because we can't fix things. The mental health issues going on right now, and they have been, I think COVID really exacerbated the whole thing, but the mental health issues going on right now are just horrific. And I think we as clinicians need to understand that we're walking into areas that we've not walked before, and we don't have the knowledge. We don't have we can fix everything. We can't have that idea any longer.
No, and actually that's one thing that I stress over and over again at training seminars and all that. You've got to make sure you throw out your pride and ego. Do not always assume that just because it worked 100 times before that it's going to work on the 101st. And that is why, like for police officers, and one of the things that I stress with all my clients, get into the habit of doing things to keep yourself safe. Maintain a reactionary gap, which is a space between you and a subject, unless you really have to get in close to get a blood draw or a blood pressure reading or whatever. But otherwise, maintain this reactionary gap. Not only it keeps you out of range for their fist or kick, but it also keeps you from inadvertently violating their sense of space. So little things like that. Oh, back to pepper spray and all that. Okay. So let's say your boss tells you that you can't carry these self-defense tools. Well, adapt, improvise, and overcome. You have a bag full of things that you could potentially use to defend yourself. You may have long fingernails that you can use to defend yourself. I teach clients and people going through my training seminars, as they walk into a scenario station, into a room, take a quick look around and see what you could potentially use as a weapon, either to defend yourself and or to be aware of, to avoid. In an office environment, you've got pens, papers, scissors, things that are stabbing instruments that could be slashing instruments. You have a heavy vase that could be used as a club. So just be aware of your surroundings, especially when you walk into an unknown house, especially for the first time, a clinician checking out a home for the very first time. Take a moment at the door before you step too far in to get your bearings on what you have in this room. As you walk into the living room, remember that the exit to the back kitchen is in this direction. Just be aware of your surroundings. Don't just blindly walk in there. Hi, my name is Arlene. I'm here to help. Be aware of where you're at. Be aware of how to get back to the front door if you need to. Yeah. There are things in the living room that you could potentially use to protect yourself. So, okay, maybe you can't carry pepper spray, but there are things that you can do to protect yourself. And that's what the other officer a couple of weeks ago emphasized. And that's what I'm emphasizing again. Folks, you absolutely have the right to go home safe to your friends and family. Right. Do not martyr yourself for $20 an hour.
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
Well, and so a lot of what you're doing too is the training, and I think with training, we do not practice enough in our professional life. Right. Like kind of to your point, Arlene, we think we have everything and we think we know everything. So why do we need to do more training? And I think a lot, especially at these corporate home care agencies that I've worked for, they do have the resources to provide the training, but most of the time it's not taken very seriously, right? But this is one of those things that they should be training, and you have to practice something like this. Even like what you're saying, even just hearing this, it's like, great, that's good. But if you're trying to do that without ever practicing it, you're probably still not going to get it right either, which might put you even more danger, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Until you've developed a certain amount of stress inoculation, which is why I created the training program the way I did. It gives people a little opportunity to develop some stress inoculation. No one, you, me, Arlene, none of us like dealing with stress and confrontation. However, you've got to be comfortable to a certain level to be able to effectively work in it. Military personnel have to be able to adapt and improvise and to continue mission. Police officers absolutely have to be able to become comfortable with a given amount of stress, drama, and chaos to still function properly within the boundaries of the law and still do their job safely and properly and go home safe. You people, the good people who care and love their fellow man, who are willing to go into someone's home, absolutely have to be able to get to a level of comfort with dealing with a stressful confrontational situation. That lack of stress inoculation, that lack of familiarity with a stressful confrontational situation is what is more likely than not going to make you or I or someone not used to it react defensively and blurt out or do something in such a manner that absolutely escalates the situation. Because if you started venting at me, John, you're upset, the bills are stacking up and doggone it, now I have to set aside 30 minutes of my day for you, John, to come in here and get my blood pressure, and you start to get loud, and I get offended by that, and I start to say or do something in such a manner that you feel like, hey, you're not respecting my home, you're not respecting my feelings. You can see where now I've started to say and do things that start to escalate it, and that is why it's so critical that organizations invest in good training to get their people to a level of stress inoculation, or at least introduce them to that, because otherwise you can sit through a week-long lecture presentation, but just listening to someone yap at you, showing slides on the screen, it's not going to teach you stress inoculation, is not going to teach you muscle memory, is not going to teach you or help you develop self-confidence, and sure as heck not going to help you develop confidence in the person sitting next to you, because you haven't gone through a situation with them, simulated or otherwise, to see how they would react and respond in that given situation. And that's what helps build team cohesion and team unity. Being able to go through these different scenarios and so on, and learning and developing this confidence in yourselves and each other, and developing this stress inoculation. No, we should not be comfortable with stress and violence, but we should be able to be aware, comfortable enough to be able to work through it and deal with it.
So is that what you do in your training sessions? Can you tell us a little bit about how those work? What you actually, because you do you go into organizations and you set up scenarios, correct?
Yes.
You have. So I am not aware. I could be wrong, and John Kublank, you may know, but I'm not aware of anyone else that does anything like this, that actually goes into organizations and does this type of training. So can you tell us, kind of walk us through a scenario? I know you're coming to Florida to do one at the health department down here. Yeah.
Yes. My team and I are coming down in early March. We're going to be we're going to be working with the Florida Association of Community Health Centers. I'm looking forward to it. They're looking forward to it. And basically, just like I said, when they first reached out to me, we talked at length, Zoom chat at the time, talked about some of the situations that they're dealing with, talking about how some of their people handled it, what went right, what went wrong. And then what's going to happen is when my team and I go down there, I have a classroom portion because I want to give people the basics on effective, successful conflict de-escalation. And then we have 4 scenarios going on at the same time. I break the class down into 2 or 3 person teams. So for example, John and Arlene get up and go through scenario 1, and that may be for a home care environment. That would be someone who just lost their grandmother and they're kind of reacting and responding negatively towards you. And then you have 3 minutes to negotiate that scenario. And then we go right into a critique phase. We always validate and affirm what people do right. That's how you develop confidence. You're being told, hey, Arlene, that's exactly what I want you to keep doing. It may not always work because there's no guarantees, but you're more likely than not to be successful if you keep doing that or saying that. So we'll talk about validate and affirm what you did right, and then we'll go into the things that you can tweak and do differently. Arlene, did you know you have a tendency to roll your eyes? Little things like that that you or someone could do under stress that they don't realize they're doing that could absolutely escalate a situation. Squaring off on someone, rolling your eyes, changing the tone of your voice, or feeling like you have to say something. Because oftentimes, if you feel like you have to have the last word, make the last comment, that you have to win, or let this person know that you're in charge, you're the clinician, this is your moment, I'm here to help, and you're trying to emphasize to this person who really in the moment does not care. You're just escalating that situation.
No. So obviously you have a lot of experience dealing with these stressful situations, but what was the reason that you wanted to start this agency, this gentle response? What was the driving force behind that?
When I retired from the police department in 2015, I was actually well on my way into another career field as a charter pilot. And the security team at my church, I attend one of the mega churches here in West Michigan, asked me to do a de-escalation class for our security team. And it was while putting together that class, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Throughout life, I have observed good people, meaning well, end up saying and doing things that escalate situations. Not just in churches, not just police officers, but I've run into it with doctors and nurses going for checkups. I've seen good people, meaning well. And YouTube is full of videos of good people meaning well, but end up saying or doing things that escalate situations. And then it just took off from there. I started out, I began as a mission and ministry to help church staff and volunteers. And then they would go back and tell two people where they work, and it just took off from there. Now my team and I travel around the country. I speak at conferences. It's just absolutely taken off. Yeah, I was going to say it's good for business, but I'm sorry the world got to that point where it's just absolutely crazy. It's really ridiculous.
I think it's also, we have just so many more people, around. I think it's hard to live in society when you're always rubbing up against each other. It just creates friction, right? Especially, and I love what you said, it's like well-intentioned people just making a mistake. And again, we talked about it earlier, fatigue of healthcare workers right now has to be a part of this equation. That we could be sending, a match into a flame, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The morale, I learned this in the military, morale is a leadership issue. If you have people suffering from low morale, it's going to be something leadership could or should be doing differently. Number one, do something to let your people know you care enough for their health and protection, and that you're not just so worried about the bottom dollar. Okay. It doesn't matter how many dollars you make if you only are in existence for a year, because everyone is going to leave you because they're either getting hurt or they don't or they just don't have confidence that you're look out after them.
Yeah. Right. One of the things that we talked about at the last with Officer Manis is, there's some things that you can do as an organization to almost pre-screen these patients. And there may be a time, and I hate to even say it, but you have to maybe fire a patient or not take a patient because the setting or their background or whomever is living in the house is not going to be good for your agency. But I think there is now need to be the discussion of what's the responsibility of the the company, and what's the responsibility of the person. And really there's not any responsibility, I suppose, with the employee per se, other than, if we do provide the training must be used, right? Like, did you actually follow what John said and follow these steps when going into the home? It's like, so there's a balance, right? And there needs to be some discussion, I think, around, what does the corporate or the company need and what does the individual need to do?
Again, there's no guarantee. And especially depending on the situation, there will be 4 situations where literally nothing you say or do is going to work to try to effectively, successfully de-escalate a situation. Number 1, the level of stress and crisis or agitation someone's under in that moment. Because we've all been aware of someone who's just so mad right now. They're not in a place to listen to you, to process what you're saying. They're just so angry. Number 2 is a level of intoxication. We've all dealt with someone who is so high or so drunk or a combination of both that you can't rationalize with an irrational person. So nothing you say or do is going to just magically de-escalate the situation. It's going to take time for them to come down from whatever level they're at. Number 3, something that we all deal with, mental cognitive disabilities and challenges, schizophrenia, autism. Once you get someone with mental illness or cognitive disabilities or something stressed out to a particular point, it may take them a little bit longer to come down just because they see the world at a more primal level. Is it a threat? Does it sound like a threat? And number 4, one of the things that would be very challenging to de-escalate is someone who has an agenda. If you come upon someone who has an agenda because they want more YouTube likes or more TikTok likes, or they want to make it on the 6 o'clock news because they have an agenda to show what a failure the health care system in Florida is, just walk away, because there's nothing you can say or do. They are clearly there for confrontation, for stress and drama. And if you allow yourself to get sucked into an argument, you're going to be on their YouTube channel getting flustered, saying things you shouldn't be saying, and it's just going to look bad. So yes, assessing a house before you send people to it is critical, but also at the same time, do not think that just because you go through my training or anyone else's training, it's the magic key to successfully and effectively de-escalate a situation. Dealing with human beings is so fluid and so dynamic, you've got to stay flexible. But again, there are some basic things you can say or do to mitigate it. But it takes self-discipline. It takes you being aware of where you're at. Because the moment you allow yourself to become frustrated, impatient, or offended, you increase the likelihood you're going to say or do something that escalates it.
But I do think that if an organization takes the time and the effort to do the training, and, for instance, bringing someone like you in and doing the training, we have something, I don't know if you've heard about it, it's called the Office of Inspector General, who requires that we have a compliance program. And if the OIG comes into your office and they find that you did not follow your policies, that's worse because you had a policy that you didn't follow than someone who didn't. This is the same kind of thing. If we did everything we could possibly do to train our staff, you're right. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball or a magic wand to say what's going to happen when you walk in through that door. But if we did what we could as an organization to protect our staff, give them the tools that they need, and then something happens, it feels to me, and I'm not an attorney, but it feels to me that we would be not as liable as if we just ignored it, like sticking our head in the sand and saying it's not going to happen to us. Then just ignoring it and having something horrible happen, and then what do you do?
I'll share this with you guys. One of the most effective de-escalating tools you have is your smile. And so if all your people can at least make initial contact with someone with an honest smile on their face, and you're friendly and so on, that's a scientifically proven measurable thing, the effectiveness of a smile. This is why we always ask front office staff members to smile, customer service, okay? Yeah. It's the same thing when you go and make contact with someone at a house. Being able to show that I was working with with a bank in Lansing, Michigan not too long ago, and I was talking about the power of your smile. And a lot of organizations know this, because the call takers in that class raised their hand and said, we have a little Post-it note in our call center cubicle that says smile. Yeah. And a little mirror so that we can see ourselves to remind us, because they know it's a scientific proven thing that a smile will soften the tone of voice on the radio, and you won't sound so harsh and all that.
Yeah, you can hear a smile, right?
Absolutely. Because I can tell you, I have called customer service and come away that much more agitated because the way that person sounded talking to me, and so it's little things like that can become a big thing if you're not careful. And so making sure, again, I'm not an attorney, but even I could tell you that the first thing I would look for is your policy procedure. Did your people follow policy and procedure before they walked into that house? And was that person properly trained and prepared to what they may encounter when they walk to that house? Did you show due regard? Did you do your due diligence? Did you research the house? Did you expand on that initial research to know who their relatives are? Is there a grandson who's a criminal or has some mental illness, and is he going to be in the house? And it's I don't think it's that much more difficult for you as a corporate organization to tell the family, hey, we will send a clinician there, but this person cannot be there. I mean, set the boundaries. Let your people know you're doing what you can to protect them. And yes, there's always, you walk into the house and the grandson's there like he shouldn't be. Well, then turn around and walk away. Do not assume it will work. Well, it'll work out this time.
Yeah.
Get into the habit of doing safe things.
It's along the lines that Arlene, it makes me think of drug diversion, right? We have such a strict policy and process for drug diversion, especially when it's the family member that's taking the medication, or if we know someone in the house is taking this medication. Very strict, because it's the doctor's signature on those meds. There is really no doctor's signature when it comes to the human being going into that unsafe environment for all these things that we've been talking about today. So it really is, again, I think we need to start taking our personal responsibility to make sure that the environment is safe, and we need to also, as a company, listen to our employees when they're saying it's unsafe. Right?
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. Instead of just looking at them and going, hey, suck it up, buttercup, I'll find someone else to take your place. Well, there's no one's beating down your door to work. I mean, hardly any, you're short staffed as it is. So do what you can to protect what you have. Your people, your staff, your volunteers are your most valuable asset. What are you doing to prove that? What are you doing? I won't say who, but I actually just had a client cancel training coming up. They've decided that they didn't want to invest in the money at this time. Now, hopefully we will come back and revisit it, but I was sad that's what was given to me.
Oh yeah.
I hope nothing happens.
Yeah.
There is a reason they came to me in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And I just, if you don't make time to properly train your people, you are definitely going to have to make time for court, lawsuits, injury,
funerals.
Funerals, So if you don't make time and effort for good training to better prepare yourself, you're gonna, you don't want life to dictate to you how you want to be running and running your business and all that.
We know a lot of these, just a couple weeks ago, I think it was New Jersey, there was a stabbing inside a hospital. I think there was a physician and 2 nurses that were stabbed by I think it was a mom who had a child. Pediatric cases are really bad because the parents, I mean, no matter what you do, you don't do it the way they think you should do it. And so that's really hard. But, when we walk into these homes, and I've done home care, I've gone out, I've done home care. And when you walk in, it's kind of like walking into your grandparents' home, and you expect things to be kind and nice and no one to not like you. That's not always the case.
No.
And again, our environment has changed so much just in this past few years. Just what the things that are going on with mental health issues and that kind of thing. And I think that I don't know that it's the clinicians as much as it is the organizations that really need to stop thinking that it's not going to happen to them, because this is not business as usual any longer.
No,
it's not if it would happen. Basically, we should just prepare for these things to happen, right?
I would rather your people be trained and not use it than to find themselves in a situation that they needed the training and don't have it, and things are getting hurt, things are getting broken.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, keep going.
It's a real reality check for young people who want to just help their fellow man to suddenly find someone who just doesn't like them. Not everyone is going to like you. And in fact, the person you're there to help may be upset and venting because they're upset that they had to reach out for help in the first place. And then you're dealing with that. And so what are the things you can say or do to mitigate that? And it's in a lot of my training seminars, I'm trying to tell people and point out to them, the reality is you're not going to win everyone over. You're not going to fix it, solve it, resolve it. There are and will be people that don't like you for whatever reason. And you're just going to have to be able to grin and bear it, keep that smile, do your job, and leave.
If you had a magic ball, how long or how many days of training should a company set aside, either annually, quarterly? What's your best recommendation?
For something like this, as often as you have people going into houses, and especially, I don't know what your turnover rate is, but probably quarterly.
Yeah.
At the very least, maybe twice a year, spring and fall. For police officers, because of our scheduling, we ended up doing a big training sometime in spring, at least once a year. But a lot of times there would be years where we would do other sporadic, smaller training sessions throughout the year. You have to stay on top of some of these things. Otherwise, you're gonna lose your edge. And you don't want to be in a bad situation and not be up to speed with your skills, your ability to think under stress, and so on. So for your field, I would say at least quarterly, maybe at least twice a year. But again, it depends on your turnover. It depends on how frequently you're encountering stressful confrontational situations. The more frequently you encounter that, then maybe the more frequently the training, just so that you stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you don't have anything happen for 6 months, and then all of a sudden, then your skill level gets old and you're a little rusty with what you were taught. So I think that the consistency of that training, whether it be formal, like going through general response, or having an informal. Do you do any training sessions where, like, you would teach an organization how to train their staff? Do you do something like that, like strictly with administrative staff?
I train the trainer. No, that's right. Yeah, no. I take everything a case-by-case basis, but generally my rule of thumb is no.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because I have experienced and seen people who were voluntold that you're now going to be a trainer. They didn't want to be a trainer. It comes out in the way they handle the class. They're not engaging speakers. And so if I'm going to train the trainer, I want to know they have a heart and passion for their fellow man. They have a heart and passion for being able to de-escalate situations, and that they want to be in my class. I don't want to waste my time and money. I don't want to waste their time and money if they don't want to be there. And so that's why, as a rule of thumb, I don't do train the trainer classes.
How many hours is your training session, your formal training session?
It's actually the basic class is about 5 hours long, 8 in the morning to 1. And then if people are interested, we'll have another 3-4 hours after that where we run people through more dynamic scenarios. And then that way, instead of just having the 4 scenarios underneath their belt, they end the day with 8 scenarios. And I can tell you from the clients who've done it, their confidence level is just out the roof, because they learn so much. Yeah. And they get so much feedback, not just from me, but from each of my instructor role players who are also retired law enforcement with the passion for this. So when you have my team and I come down, it's not just John Riley. It's 5 of us with 140 years of combined experience of dealing with situations, sometimes with people trying to hurt us, and being able to de-escalate it. And so that's generally how a training session goes. It's maybe 1 full day. For clients that have more than 20 people, my classes are limited to 20 people, because I've learned through experience that with 20 people going through with 4 scenarios going on at the same time, we're more likely than not to end at the 5-hour mark at 1 o'clock. For people with more than that, 40, 50, 60 people, we have stayed multiple days. We've stayed 3 days in Pennsylvania. Where else? Yeah, we stay multiple days depending on what the client needs and wants. But generally, it's very close knit. It's 20 people, and it's one-on-one with my instructor role players. And I keep things moving because I know what it's like to sit around waiting for your turn. I keep things moving, and it's very engaging, and it's very dynamic. It's very fluid, and it's very realistic. Because the scenarios are geared towards what you have experienced. And what I often do, like, for example, if you guys wanted us to come down, I would ask you to give me some examples of some of the situations you've encountered, your people have encountered, and I'll have my instructors recreate them. So it's an opportunity to do over, and also to kind of learn, okay, this is how we think you should have handled it compared to how it was handled. And here's the difference,
Right.
That makes sense. If people are going to try to get in touch with you, or they wanted to learn more about you, is the website the best way to get a hold of you, or what do you suggest?
Yeah, my webpage, gentle-response.com. I asked them to check that out, but really do your homework. Go to my YouTube page, Gentle Response De-escalation Training. Go through all the videos that I have posted there, because what I'll do since COVID is I'll see a situation in the news or on social media, and I'll grab onto that, and I'll talk about how de-escalation knowledge and skills most likely would have helped this situation end very differently. So there's a lot of videos that I have out there, and I also have videos of training seminars that we've done across the country, just so that people can see this is what it looks like and sounds like. And I have commentary from leaders, corporate leaders, CEOs, people who went through the training, talking about how engaging it is, how informative it is. So my webpage and my YouTube page. But yes, I do have a toehold in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that. Yeah. In this day and age, everything's so social media driven.
Yeah.
So yeah. I have a toehold everywhere. So yeah.
Absolutely. If you were going to give, just kind of wrapping things up, if you're going to give our audience, the companies or the employees themselves, one piece of advice, again, I think I know what you're going to say, but what would you tell them?
For the parent organizations, for the business owners and the businesses, take care of your people. All right, they're your biggest, most valuable asset. Show them that you care. Do what you can to keep them protected, keep them safe. For the people on the ground, the boots on the ground who are going into these houses, start off with a smile, and just know you can turn around and walk away. Don't feel compelled to continue walking into an unknown, especially if you don't have a warm, fuzzy feeling about it. Something was said, something was done, or something's left out in the open that doesn't make you feel safe. Walk away. I'd rather you come back next week than something happen and you never come back at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and now I want to get some training for myself and my staff, because I was just thinking throughout the show, I'm like, man, I send my employees, my team members into some really dangerous spots, and it's not because I want to, it's because we want to take care of our community. That's what we're called to do, but we need to do it safely, right?
Correct. And again, that goes back to you. I want to help you, but this person's acting loud, rude, and obnoxious, and you can see where you can potentially get offended by that. You're like, come on.
Yeah.
And then it could potentially spiral. And God bless you.
Get offended by it as well. Why don't they understand that I'm just here to help? And it's there's not much that we can do about the situation sometimes, but we can definitely make it worse if we're doing the wrong thing as well.
That's exactly right.
People doing the wrong thing.
And set your mind right. Accept that you're probably going to be blamed for this person's illness by their family members.
Right.
As police officers, we're blamed for everything. And now as clinicians, you are the medical representative who should be making grandma better or making dad better. And why aren't you doing enough? Why aren't you right? And they probably know your job better than you. and they're going to be telling you how you should be doing your job. And you've got to accept that you're going to deal with it, because as long as you accept it, when it happens in your head, you're like, well, there it is. I knew it was going to come. I'm going to stay focused on what I have to do. But it's when you get blindsided by this person who's rude to you, and all you want to do is help, and you're not prepared for that. You run the risk of getting your feelings hurt, by getting frustrated, offended, and impatient, and saying things that could, or doing things that could potentially escalate it. So smile through it, people. Take a deep breath. You got this.
Awesome. Arlene, thank you so much for having us all together today. I know setting this up with John. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. If they want to get in hold of you, everybody, it's www.gentle-response.com.
Yeah.
John has all of his links there. You should check it out. Definitely want to keep your people safe, because staying informed is staying prepared. Thank you all for watching. We'll see y'all next week.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, Arlene. Thanks, John. We'll see you soon.
Right.
Bye-bye.